Hi, my name is Jeremy Pass, and my presentation is on international mitigation issues. What is disaster mitigation? Mitigation and disaster management, sometimes referred to as prevention or disaster risk reduction, are sustained actions taken to reduce the likelihood that a hazard risk will occur, or to reduce the consequences should the hazard occur. Mitigation is a phase of disaster management performed before a disaster occurs, rather than in anticipation of or in response to. Two primary areas of concern for developed and developing countries are climate change and rapid urbanization. The United Nations Office of Disaster Risk Reduction stated last year that at least 90% of disasters linked to natural hazards are climate-related. The effects of global warming, rising sea levels, and warmer sea surface temperatures increase disaster frequency and consequences. For example, last year thousands of people died from heat waves in Europe and Asia. Also last year, Mexico was hit by the strongest cyclone ever to make landfall, resulting from increased moisture in the air over warmer than ever sea surface temperatures. Rapid urbanization in developing countries is elevating risk from both climate and geological hazards, since the potential for heavy physical and economic losses increases apace with population growth, migration, and unplanned development. Under these circumstances, developing countries have tremendous difficulty achieving development goals, since the consequences of natural disasters often are so severe it can take years and even decades to recover from. International financial institutions such as the World Bank are increasingly emphasizing and incorporating mitigation requirements into their development loans as a means to reinforce loan recipient countries to build back better, or in other words, implement mitigation measures into their recovery process. This increases the likelihood developing countries will adopt mitigation practices that can facilitate progressive development by saving lives and property when the next disaster strikes. Mitigation is costly and often perceived by politicians as not cost-efficient, since the immediate payoffs are not present for a long time, and that there are other priorities such as education and the military that are more deserving of their limited economic funding. In March 2015, the United Nations Office of Disaster Risk Reduction was tasked to implement the Sendai Framework for Disaster Risk Reduction, which is an international agreement between United Nations member states that addresses the development agenda by providing a framework that aims to substantially reduce disaster risk and losses in lives and economic livelihoods by placing priority on disaster risk reduction through mitigation practices and preparedness measures in an effort to reverse the negative effects of natural disasters in developing countries. International recognition of disaster mitigation practice as being the key to sustainable development in developing countries, and as a defensive measure against the exasperating effects climate change has on the frequency and severity of natural disasters, is a positive step toward greater global resilience to disasters. There are many obstacles to adopting mitigation projects in developing countries, but through international cooperation between countries, facilitated through the United Nations, these obstacles can begin to be addressed and hopefully overcome, because mitigation cannot remain to be only a luxury of the developed countries.